Okay, can you hear me now? Can people hear me now? Please let me know if you can hear me now. Dolores says yes. Can you hear me on YouTube also, yes, Dolores? I can hear you. Okay, great. Unbeknownst to me, my mic got on mute. That is probably my fault. But anyway, let me, as long as you can hear me on both of those sources, we are now fine. So you didn't hear me go through the piece on the eviction news at all, right? I was totally blanked out for that period. Is that correct? Okay, let me know, please. Yes. Was it possible for anybody to hear during the treatment of the eviction moratorium? Because if not, I will go back and do that again. It's important news. So you couldn't hear me the whole time, is that correct? Okay. So Dolores heard nothing from start, so I'm going to pull up. Okay, I'm going to pull up that Common Dreams piece again and go through it once again. Maybe not in all the detail, but I will share it and I will go through the high points. We have a lot of other things to cover, but that's important. So I'm going to go through that again. Okay, so basically, there was a response to Cori Bush, other progressives, other squad members sleeping outside since Friday night. And according to the article from Common Dreams, written by Brett Wilkins on August 3rd, the progressive lawmakers and activists were hailed for a new CDC eviction moratorium. And this moratorium is a little different. It was intended to target specific areas of the country where cases are rapidly increasing, which likely would be exacerbated by mass evictions. Jeff Stein of the Washington Post said that the new moratorium is going to cover 90% of the country and last for 60 days. Chuck Schumer applauded the news and complimented the people. There was a quote from Alexandra Rojas. I'm not going to go over on this. Cori Bush tweeted, on Friday night, I came to the Capitol with my chair. I refused to accept that Congress could leave for vacation while 11 million people faced eviction. For 5 days, we've been out here demanding that our government acts to save lives. Today, our movement moved mountains, and it did. Okay. Quote, I want to thank the Biden administration for finding a way to keep people in their homes, said Bernie Sanders, while states distribute the $47 billion in assistance that Democrats in Congress provided in the American Rescue Plan. That was quoted as $46 billion, in a video by AOC. Bernie said, I'm also very proud of Representatives Cori Bush, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the Progressive Caucus for leading the effort to push the federal government to respond directly to the needs of the working class. And there was a little video from AOC. I'm going to put that on again, but that might have been what caused my trouble the first time. So let me put that on again for you to see.
I think what the message here today is clear, is that every day people can make a change. We can always demand better, and we can push ourselves to be better. And that should not be taboo in our democracy. But in addition, we want to make sure that we send out a very clear message that should and once we get a moratorium extension in place, we need governors and municipalities to get emergency rental assistance funds out. That is what the point of this moratorium is. It's to buy time. There's been $46 billion allocated by Congress to state and local governments, and those state and local governments, those governors and those municipalities need to get those funds out. But this is a huge victory for working families. This is a huge victory for the vulnerable, and it is a huge victory for the power of direct action and not taking no for an answer. They say nothing can get done when Congress is in recess, and just everyday people this moment shows that nothing is impossible, and as they say, until it is done, as Mandela says also. Thank you.
Okay, so let me point out that to the left, okay, of AOC is Cori Bush. I have my pointer on Cori Bush. Right next to her is Mondaire Jones, who was there today. I'm not sure who the other congressman is. I think that is Al Green, but I'm not sure. Not sure, but he's definitely a congressman. Now, standing right next to Cori Bush, I didn't really recognize him before, but because his face is blocked out, I believe that is Jimmy Gomez, who happens to be my daughter's congressman in California. And you see over here to the right of me, okay, to the right of the picture, my right picture, is Mariah Grimm, okay, of Rising, taking in the scene, but recording it. So that will be on Rising tomorrow, undoubtedly, and will be covered there. So going through the rest of the article, there was a statement from Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar was out there for part of the weekend also with them. Said the new moratorium is life-changing for millions of people on the brink of eviction. I'm thankful to President Biden for his efforts to have the CDC extend the eviction moratorium for our most vulnerable. This win would not have been possible with bold, steadfast leadership from Congresswoman Bush. I applaud her and so many other members of Congress and organizers who continue to push the administration to act. Quote, while this new moratorium on evictions is welcome, this is just a start and will only provide a temporary solution to the mass eviction crisis. At the beginning of the pandemic, I introduced the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act to permanently cancel all payments on rental homes and mortgages until the end of the pandemic and provide relief to small landlords who are also struggling due to Congress's inaction. You can already predict another housing crisis will occur, which is why it's so imperative we pass bold, long-term solutions. Now, that's very interesting because Franco of the Frank Analysis was there and was also recording the victory statements at the Capitol. And he shouted out after a statement by Cori Bush that is not covered, okay, in this article, basically a victory statement, okay, by Cori Bush. This is not a victory. It's only temporary. Okay, it is not a victory. It is best a ceasefire. Okay, and he was right. His comments were quite unwelcome in front of the Capitol steps because everybody was looking to celebrate this partial victory they had won. But he was right to call out that it only postpones the problem for the period of the moratorium. At the end of the moratorium, there are all those people who owe rent. It's significant that Ilhan gave this statement because she has her eye on the ball with respect to a permanent solution, specifically the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act. Now, whether it will be possible to get that through Congress, I cannot say. One of the problems in extending this moratorium here was that Nancy Pelosi evidently thought she didn't have the votes to push it through the House. So that was a problem. There was some Democrats who were opposed to extending the moratorium. That's a very significant thing, by the way. So, but continue on. Ilhan also said, the bottom line is we have the House, Senate, and White House. There are no excuses for our inability to act. We have the power to stop the next eviction crisis and must act, but now. I don't know if she's going to get that because, they've gone on recess now, okay, or adjourned, even gone on vacation. Jayapal was happy to grab some credit. She said, quote, "This couldn't have happened without the months-long advocacy of the Congressional Progressive Caucus." I guess there's something to that statement, actually, because of what Ilhan Omar just said. She had actually introduced the bill to do something about it. But anyway, Jayapal hailed the committed, quote, committed, clear-eyed activists like Bush, leading the way, galvanizing attention and calling on D.C. to govern with moral clarity, unquote, adding that, quote, again, it gets results, unquote. There was a tweet from Presley, okay, Ayanna Presley. I'm not going to go through that one, but it is significant that Bush, along with Omar and Presley, slept outside the U.S. Capitol building on Friday night. Now, I believe that Bush was there not only on Friday night, but every night since, with the other squad members coming in from time to time. I don't think AOC ever slept outside for a night. Okay, if I'm mistaken, somebody correct me. She was there but one of the nights to give a speech, but she did go home to sleep. In Bush's case, she just stayed, okay, for the whole time. The squad members were joined over the weekend by other lawmakers and activists who demanded that President Joe Biden, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, and other leaders, quote, stop playing the blame game, unquote, and, quote, do whatever it takes to end this eviction emergency. And so that's that piece. It's an important piece. It's an important that was done. I think it's something the squad and the CPC can claim some credit for. But as Ilhan Omar and Franco of Frank Analysis have said, it is not a victory. It is at best a partial victory. We can predict the next eviction crisis. The Congress has to act to stop it. Okay, so next, is there any news on Nina? Has anybody been watching Jordan? Anybody watching Jordan and Jen Dyes to see what the latest is? They were tracking it each time it's reported. Okay, the reporting of the results were delayed to some degree there, and in other states that has often meant there's monkeying with the machines or there's monkeying of some kind that's going on. So anyway, we just have to keep track of that. I'm going to do something else which I normally don't do on here, and that is I'm going to cover an interview that Jordan did on Sunday with Joe Givarsi, I'm sorry, Joe Givaris, I think it is. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is the recently new president of Our Revolution. So he was interviewed, and he was the first one that I've heard to try to explain the strategy which they're following, okay, at Our Revolution, which it's a pretty good guess that Bernie is following that kind of strategy too. And it's a pretty good guess that Congressional Progressive Caucus has until now been trying to follow the same strategy that Joe Givaris is going to talk about, okay, in this interview. What I want to do, it's a long interview, it's about a half hour. What I want to do is replay it piece by piece and comment on it. My comments will be largely negative, of course. So maybe I shouldn't say of course, but they will be largely negative. I'll warn you about that now. So here we go. Let me share that. Okay, so please tell me if the sound is okay here. I want to make sure that things, okay, are going right. I'm going to start it up now and tell me if you're getting the sound okay.
So Mrs. Joseph, last name again? Givargis. Did I pronounce it right? Givargis? Givargis. Joseph Givargis with Our Revolution, the executive director. Our Revolution, in addition to Nina, has done a lot of work for progressive candidates. Talk to me about, we're a day away, obviously. Seems to me Nina has a really, really good ground game here. What are your thoughts in terms of just, what's going to happen?
So, yeah,
Okay, before he answers, were you able to hear that? Okay, everybody. Were you able to get the sound from the video? Please let me know before I go forward with it. Any comments? Are you able to get it over YouTube? Thank you, Dolores. Okay, excellent. I'll continue with it then.
I think this election comes down to big money versus people power. The upside is, Our Revolution Ohio volunteers have done a tremendous job, right? Over 200,000 voter contacts. They, phone banks every week. They're on the doors, right? That's what powers our movement. The thing is, the establishment fears Nina and Our Revolution. And in the end game, they are pouring inordinate sums of dark money into this race to smear Nina and our movement. And that's the challenge we face, right? It is establishment Democrats, it is corporate Democrats, and it is Trump-aligned, right, Republicans who are joining forces, spending, right, 100 million plus to saturate the airwaves and spread disinformation. So that's what this fight is about. Can we, the people, organize to defeat big money in politics? I think it's tightening, and it's incumbent on everybody out there, right, to get out and mobilize to vote.
Now, let me ask you, because the name is Our Revolution.
Okay, so far, of course, I think everything he said is uncontroversial, certainly from my point of view, and from most of our point of views. I'll go on now.
So revolution is in the name, but there's a lot of progressives right now, I'm sure you guys are seeing it, that want a different kind of revolution, and that's just burn the whole fucking thing down. They're dissatisfied. They feel like, whether it be the squad or others, they're not fighting hard enough. They're going along too much with the Democratic establishment, and that just gives them cynicism, period, about any candidate. What's your message to a lot of progressives who are growing more cynical that electoral politics just is a waste?
So Jordan just asked the $64 trillion question.
Well, look, we live within a democracy that I value, right? I believe this democracy enables us to organize to create the world we want to create. We did this in the 30s and 40s, right? Massive strikes, people organizing, elected one of the most progressive presidents ever, Franklin D. Roosevelt. We created the biggest labor movement, middle class in the history of the world.
Okay, so I hate to nitpick, but we did not do that. Okay, our ancestors did that. In my case, okay, my father did that. Okay, my mother had a part, okay, in that. I'm fairly old. Okay, I'm 82 now. For many of you, it was your grandparents and maybe your great-grandparents, okay, who did that. And times were different. And the president was not Joe Biden. The president was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. A hell of a lot more vigorous president, despite his polio, and a lot smarter president, evidently, than Joe Biden. And a lot more open-minded in terms of doing things and changing the country and encouraging changes. Yes, he did it with the help of people who made him do it. But he is reputed to have told people to go ahead and make me do it. And he was obviously friendly to labor organizing and friendly to mass mobilization. So the situation was different from today as well. There was an economic depression that was not necessarily conceived of as temporary at the time, the deepest one the country had. Okay, the habits of Congress with respect to spending were very different. The size of the deficits was even very different. The kinds of deficits that we have today would not even have been conceivable in Roosevelt's time. I'm talking about as a percent of GDP now, not absolute dollars. Okay, so we did not do it. It was those people back there who did it. They're Americans, okay, and we're Americans. But there's a lot of history under the bridge since then, a lot of change, both pro doing the kind of thing that was done during the 30s and anti doing the kind of thing that was done during the 30s. And while the 30s had to face the grip, okay, of an older strain of capitalism, we have to face the grip and the sophistication and the control of the media, which our neoliberals have. So this time, okay, is very different. Just because our ancestors did something back then does not mean that the conditions are right for us to do something today. Now, I'm not trying to put a damper on that. I'm not saying we can't do it. I believe we can have a Green New Deal as well. But it may turn out to be a lot harder for us to get that than it was for our ancestors to get the original New Deal going forward.
But how did we do that. It's not about elected officials. It's about our movement. And here's the thing. Right now, we do not.
So there's a little shift there. Okay. It was about our movement. The movement in the 30s, again, wasn't our movement. It was our ancestors' movement. We have a different movement today. It's a much different movement. Okay. If it still exists in the same way that it did at the beginning of 2020, it's the not me, us movement. But we've had a lot of deviations from that movement since then. And as we go forward here, I think we're going to see that Joe Givaris, if I've pronounced it correctly, is one of the deviations.
Not have 106 Democrats signed on.
At Wegmans, we've made shopping easy. Use our Wegmans app or visit us at wegmans.com.
To Medicare for all. So what does that mean? We're not going to win that vote right now. So what we have to do, every activist, if you care about our democracy, needs to go after those 106 Democrats and get them aboard. Then we pass it.
So that's the first thing that he's saying. We have to go after the 106 Democrats who have not signed on as co-sponsors of the bill. Is he assuming that the 117 Democrats who did sign on as co-sponsors of the bill are really for the bill and would really vote for the bill if it reached the floor? Is he assuming that the 106 who did not co-sponsor it will not vote for the bill? Because co-sponsoring doesn't necessarily predict the way people are going to vote when a bill gets to the floor. And he's assuming that it does. And if he's assuming that, then to some degree, he is gaslighting us. If that bill ever gets to the floor, there may be a whole lot of people who haven't signed on as co-sponsors who, in the event it gets right in front of them, don't want to be on the negative side of this question. Not with 88% of Democratic primary voters being for this. On the other hand, there are some people who are really tight with financial interests in pharmaceuticals and things like that. Like, for example, Hakeem Jeffries, who signed on as a co-sponsor, who may, when push comes to shove, not vote for that bill. I think there would have to be a lot of pressure on him for him to vote for that particular bill. Okay, but anyway, the tacit assumption here is that because we cannot win the vote, it should not go onto the floor. That is a very arguable assumption, and he's just making it and going right on.
But right now, working with Bernie, working with Pramila in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, we've gotten a verbal yes from moderates and conservatives to lower the eligibility age to 60.
So that's something new. They've gotten a verbal yes. That means, I suppose, that they've talked to people, or the Progressive Caucus has talked to people, and maybe there's some general consensus. Yes, they can move the eligibility age for Medicare from 65 down to 60. Now that is really something, but there's a remark I want you to keep in mind here, and that is that when you go in and you pass a bill which lowers it from 65 to 60, that gets the people who are 60 and over excited. That maybe gets the people from 55 to 60 a little bit excited because they're getting near 60. But it divides the American people. It is not Medicare for all. What Medicare for all is everybody in, nobody out. That is Medicare for all. What he's advocating for is not Medicare for all. Why is this important? Because you won't get the same enthusiasm in back of the measure to lower the age to 60 as you would behind Medicare for All. 88% of Democratic primary voters are for Medicare for All. You won't get 88% of Democratic primary voters for lowering the age to 60. I mean, I think you'll probably still get a majority. I think there'll probably be a healthy degree of approval for it. But there are going to be a lot of people who don't want to settle for that, who need coverage now. There are a lot of people who are going to be dying because they don't have coverage now. He seems to be looking at this as kind of a strategic game, not looking at it from the standpoint that it's a moral issue, not actually looking at it from the standpoint that there are certain things that maybe you do not compromise on. I want to distinguish here between two things. He is not a congressman. He is not a senator. He is not a person who has the job of actually voting for a bill. Now, when you're in there and you're voting for a bill and you've tried your hardest, you tried your damnedest to get the best bill you can possibly get, and you find out that you can't get that, but you can get a compromise that will advance things very, very far, then maybe in certain situations it is the obligation of a representative or a senator to make that compromise. But our revolution is not a senator or a congressman. It's an external pressure group. It's supposed to represent us, the Not Me, Us movement. Do we want to compromise or advocate for compromise? Do we want to get all excited over a bill that's going to lower the Medicare age from 65 to 60? I mean, God damn it. In the year 2009, Congressman Alan Grayson was advocating for lowering that. His compromise was to lower that to age 55 and over. That was 12 years ago. That was 12 years ago. And Alan Grayson, he was pretty left in the caucus, but he wasn't exactly a flaming radical. He wasn't Bernie Sanders. He wasn't Dennis Kucinich. He was Alan Grayson, fundamentally an establishment guy. And he was proposing that, advocating for it in 2009. It's 12 years later. And we've got this guy from an interest group, a pressure group, a lobby organization, who suddenly has decided not to advocate for more than Medicare for all, not to advocate for something that Bernie advocated for all through the 2020 campaign and all through the 2016 campaign. Why do you think so many people came out in support of Bernie? Why do you think so many people came out and went door to door for Bernie in those campaigns? Why do you think so many people were heartbroken when Bernie wasn't successful? Because Bernie was for Medicare for all. Bernie was for the $16.2 trillion Green New Deal. Bernie was for student debt elimination. Bernie was for all these things. He wasn't for the compromise positions. And you knew if he was going to become president, he was going to push for all these things. You also knew that our revolution at that time was going to push for all these things. Now here, all of a sudden, here's our revolution talking up the virtues and asking people to get excited over a little reform, reducing the age of Medicare from 65 to 60. Going on.
Gotten a verbal yes to expand benefits for dental, vision, to lower prescription drug prices.
Got a verbal yes.
Yes to end of fossil fuel subsidies to keep the shit in the ground. Let's take that and
now, not keeping the shit in the ground. They didn't get a verbal yes to keep the shit in the ground. They got a verbal yes to stop the federal subsidies. stop the federal subsidies, helping them to get the shit out of the ground. Yeah, that's good. We should do that. But that's not a Green New Deal. That's not even that significant a step towards a Green New Deal. It's a little bit, a little bit. If that's all we get right now, what kind of progress have we made towards actually bringing climate change under control? That is nothing. Go on.
In March. And what people don't understand, this radical left, right? You know, I love everyone, but we have to be strategic to win. And
just what does being strategic mean? Does it mean we have to be strategic? He's telling us it's strategic to compromise in this way and to be happy about it. In the context of what strategy is it strategic to do that?
Advance our movement. We have to be strategic. We have victories in our sight.
It's also to say, by the way, that you and I and the people outside, the people who don't work with him, are not strategic. And we have to be strategic. Which I suppose he means we have to go along with whatever he thinks is strategic.
We can advance Medicare. We can get to Medicare right now, right? But we don't have the votes.
He says we can get to Medicare for all right now. So what he seems to be saying is that we can get a floor vote right now if we want a floor vote right now, but we don't have the votes to win. That's what he's saying. Isn't he? I mean, that's what I think I heard him say, right? He said we can get to Medicare for all right now. He said we can get to it. We just can't win it. How does he know we can't win it if we don't try? Yeah, I'm skeptical about our winning it too. To be realistic, I'm skeptical about our winning it. But if we put it on the floor, it's an emergent situation. 88% of Democratic primary voters are for it. Who's going to go against the 88%? Who's going to go on record and go against the 88% and vote no? Who? I want to know. If we know right now who's going to vote against those 88%, don't tell me those 106 Democrats who haven't signed on to the bill yet as co-sponsors, that all of those 106 Democrats are prepared to vote against it, not with 88% of Democratic primary voters saying that they're for it. I mean, you put your seat on the line if you're going to vote against it with those kinds of polling figures. You put your seat on the line. If you just fail to co-sponsor it, you don't put your seat on the line. If somebody's got a congressperson who's a nice person, appears to care about them, appears to be doing things, is personable, has a good appearance, you don't notice if they don't co-sponsor it. You're going to notice if they vote against it, and you're one of the 88% who's for it.
But we have the vote to expand it. And the way it's set up is the funding for these programs, right? The way Bernie and the CPC are organizing. The funding for these programs is going to expire in a few years, right? That means, are we going to have Democrats and Republicans say, oh, we're going to take away healthcare? We're going to bump the age back up to 65? No, let's win this fight. And then if we mobilize, when that funding sunsets, we can keep lowering the age. We can keep expanding it. But there's a strategy.
I agree with that. But look at what he's saying. Okay, look at what he's saying. We're going to pass this now, and it's going to expire in a couple of years. He's saying that, right? That's 2023. What if the Democrats do not win in 2022? Are the Republicans, are they really going to renew that program? Or are they going to go back to old Medicare? Or are they going to try to privatize Medicare entirely? We don't know what's going to happen. That's going to depend on what happens with the various voting rights bills, okay, or, voting mechanics bills that are in the Congress right now that we absolutely can't pass because we can't get rid of the filibuster. He's not talking about getting rid of the filibuster here. He's talking about, well, we can get a yes to lower it right now. That's all that he's saying. And then he's speculating. He's saying, well, if we do get it renewed in 2 years, then we can expand it some more. What can we expand it to? Can we expand it from 60 to 55? So that 4 years from now, 55 and over have expanded Medicare? That's still nowhere near Medicare for all. It's nowhere near Medicare for all. It's nowhere near getting rid of the murderers by spreadsheet. It's nowhere near getting rid of the butchers. And it's 4 years down the road, 2025. What is this man's schedule for getting us to Medicare for all? What is his schedule? I mean, Bernie's schedule from his Senate bill was 4 years to get us to Medicare for all. That was 4 years. And Pramilla's was 2 years to get us to Medicare for all. What is Joe Givari's schedule? Is it 6 years or 8 years? People dying every year because they're uncovered by health insurance? We're talking about, by my estimation, 68,000 people per year are dying right now. People may disagree with that estimate, but I say it's 1 out of every 781 people, based on studies that have been done so far, that lack insurance are going to die because they don't have insurance. And those numbers are probably higher because of COVID. That was pre-COVID estimates. Maybe now with COVID, it's 1 out of 350. I don't know. But it's estimated by some people that 100,000 people died from COVID already because they didn't have insurance. Some people think it's even 200,000. And it well could be, because they are underestimating the amount of people who have died from COVID altogether. They're still saying it's about 650,000. Okay, and the University of Washington is saying it's over 1 million. Anyway.
Strategy, right? Protest is not governing. Protest is not power. And that's what many on the left don't understand.
That is bullshit. Protest is not power. Protest is not the same as governing. Everybody knows that. That is why we protest, so we can move the people who are governing, so we can move the people who have power, so we can build mass movements, so that we can have more power to move the people who are in power. We all know that. We're not children. We don't have to be told that protest isn't the same as governing. I mean, this is patronizing. This is patronizing. This is a person who's used to being a member of the elite and who doesn't understand bottom-up politics.
We have to build power, right? And effectively govern, right? Within the system we live in. It's not perfect, but you know what? I love America, and I think we can make it better. And that's what we're doing. What is strategic?
That's to say nothing. All of us are patriotic Americans. We all love America. We all want to see it get better. We all think it can get better. Now, there are many of us who think not only is our system not perfect, but it's pretty bad. That's true. That doesn't make us any less patriotic Americans because we think it's pretty bad. It's obviously pretty bad. If it wasn't so damn bad, why would the rich have had such success in buying it, in controlling it? Going on.
Way with movement leaders. It is inside, it is outside.
What do you say to the counterpoint that FDR wasn't naturally a progressive? There was a lot of.
So he mentioned there, he's talking about it's inside and it's outside. It's got to be inside, okay, and it's got to be outside. So I'm real interested in finding out what he thinks is going to be outside. When he says outside, what does he mean? Is it the same thing we mean? Going back to Jordan's question.
Movement progressives that pushed him to the left, and what you're saying, yeah, don't say no. We don't want the Medicare to be lowered. Take it, but why on the other side can't you do things like leverage your votes to force a floor vote, or say to President Biden, yeah, we'll consider your infrastructure package. We want the $15 minimum wage in. Voting as a block. It seems like why is it an either or? Why can't both things be done? Whether it be something like force the vote or other things.
Well, like I'm saying, forcing the vote and losing isn't necessarily good. We know
Getting people on the record is not good.
they're already on the record. We know the 117 people who are on the bill. We are
He thinks co-sponsorship is on the record. He thinks that's equivalent to what you get when you have a floor vote. At least that's what he's saying there. I can't say he thinks that. He might be gaslighting us when he says that, because he damn well ought to know that it's not the same as going on record on a floor vote. He just spouted nonsense. Now, either he did it because he's stupid or he did it because he's gaslighting us.
going to the offices of the 106 who are not.
He's trying to divert pressure from the Congressional Progressive Caucus and from the squad that people are currently exerting and saying, look at that guy over there under the tree. It's basically, don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that guy over there under the tree. But we didn't elect those guys under the trees. We didn't elect those 106 people. In the House, we elected many of those Progressive Caucus people. In one way or another, we elected maybe 30, 40, or 50 of them. And we want them to represent us. And if we see that they're not representing us, why would we ignore them? Why wouldn't we say, look, you're not representing us. Next time, we're not going to give you money. Next time, we're not going to work for you. Next time, we're not going to vote for you. You're public servants, and we elected you as our public servants. Many of us gave up hard-earned money to get you in. Money we don't have. Time we don't have. Door-to-door activity we didn't have. We got you people there and you're not representing us? You're cavorting around with the elite? We give you millions of dollars and you give 100,000 to conservatives that we hate? And we're supposed to keep quiet about it and talk to the other 106 that you're even giving our money to? Screw that.
That's what it takes. Forcing a vote and losing, forcing a vote even on the 15 minimum wage. We lost it.
No, we did not lose it, at least not quite. Here's what happened. I've told you this before, but I'm going to tell it to you again. Here's what happened. The bill with the $15 an hour, the American Rescue Plan with $15 an hour in it, $15 an hour by 2025, by the way. It wasn't that generous. But anyway, that was in it, okay, and it went up to the Senate. At that point, the CPC members in the House could have made a public statement and saying, if this bill comes back from the Senate without the minimum wage provision in it, We're going to vote against it. It's not going to pass. If you want this American Rescue Plan to pass, there's got to be a floor vote on the bill with the minimum wage in it, and you've got to pass it. That's a bottom line principle of ours that we're not going to compromise on. We all ran on it. Joe Biden ran on it. Democrats ran on it all over the country. That's a bottom line principle we're not going to compromise on. That's not what happened. They didn't say that. Bernie Sanders didn't say that. What happened? Well, the parliamentarians said the minimum wage shouldn't be in the bill because it didn't fit the requirements, for reconciliation. That guy in the White House, I won't call him any names right now other than that guy in the White House, said, I respect the parliamentarian. I respect my low-grade, low-level employee, not my employee, but the Congress's low-level, low-grade employee working for the Senate. And I'm going to allow whatever she says to control what I do and what I allow my vice president to do. That's basically what he said. And the progressives did not push back. They could have said even at that point, well, I'm sorry, this reconciliation bill is going to fail if you listen to the parliamentarian, so you better not listen to the parliamentarian if you want this bill to pass. But the House progressives didn't say that. Bernie in the Senate did not say that. He did not release a statement saying he was not going to vote for the ARP if it didn't have the $15 an hour in it. Bernie, who campaigned on the $15 an hour every year since 2012, would not say that to defend it. Chuck Schumer went ahead without a statement from Bernie, and unilaterally he took the $15 an hour provision out of the bill, placed it on the Senate floor without that provision in it. Then what Bernie did is he put forward an amendment to put it back in. Bernie, therefore, forced the vote on the amendment. He lost that vote. But guess what? Bernie did, and the House Democrats did not force the vote on the American Rescue Plan with the $15 an hour in it. I contend today, and I'll probably continue to contend for the rest of my life, that if they had forced the vote on the American Rescue Plan with the $15 an hour in it, no Democrat would have had the guts to tank that American Rescue Plan with the $15 an hour in it. He's saying that we forced the vote for the $15 an hour. He's a liar. We did not force the vote for $15 an hour in the right way, in the way that would have won. He's got to know that. He's got to know that. If he doesn't know that, he doesn't deserve to be the president of our revolution.
Right? Bernie forced it. We lost it. It doesn't help our movement. 8 Democrats in the Senate. It means we've got to organize more. What moved Roosevelt was organizing. It was wildcat strikes. It was people mobilizing so that the political establishment couldn't say no.
So, yeah, there were wildcat strikes. There was a whole movement. There's a lot of different things. So the people in Congress couldn't say no. He's right. So what does he and our revolution do? When popular movements start, like the Saturday before last, the March for Medicare for All in 50 cities, does our revolution nationally support that? Did they support that? That was something that grew from the bottom up, out in 55 cities. It was a true democratic movement producing the March for Medicare for All. the biggest march for Medicare for all there has ever been. And did our revolution and Bernie Sanders and the squad, did they all welcome that? Did they all support that? Did they give their approval to that? Did they see that as making them want to vote for that? No. Why not? Because they had already decided that in spite of the people dying, in spite of the tough time people were having, that they weren't going to push for Medicare for all this year because Nancy Pelosi had said, and she was the Speaker of the House, you will never get Medicare for all, and because Joe Biden said that if ever crossed his desk, he would veto it. And of course, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema were completely opposed to it, and a number of other people bought by the pharmaceutical companies and by the providers within the Senate also were terribly, terribly opposed to it. So these people, our revolution, Bernie Sanders, the squad, the CPC, the people we've supported for these years, made a unilateral decision without consulting us, without consulting the base, that they were going to pre-compromise and not fight for Medicare for all this year. But Jayapal put forward a lovely bill in March, better than her earlier bill, better than H.R. 1384, H.R. 1976, a lovely bill. But it turned out to be a messaging bill. She had no strategy to fight for it. She had no plan to fight for it. She had no intention to fight for it, at least not after the first few weeks. She got her signals probably from the powers that be, that there was going to be no Medicare for all this year, that there was a chance to do great things with one reconciliation bill or maybe even two reconciliation bills, get lots and lots of goodies for people, but not Medicare for all. They made that decision that they wanted to be at the table more than they wanted to push for Medicare for all. That's not what we put them there for. That's not why we support our revolution. Where does our revolution get its money from? It gets its money from people like us on the bottom, working people, other people who don't have much money, but who trust our revolution to represent them. And this guy and the other people running our revolution decided to betray what we wanted, which was Medicare for all now. We always want it now. We want our people to fight for it now. But these people decided from on high, without consulting us, that they were going to do something else. They were going to follow a different political strategy than we wanted them to follow, because they think they know politics better than we.
And that's where we're at in this moment. We are moving the ball forward. And if we lose on Medicare expansion, we're not.
This is not a football game. It's not a baseball game. It's not a soccer game. It's not about moving the ball forward. It's about solving a problem. What is the problem? The problem is we have a lot of uninsured Americans. We have a lot of inadequately insured Americans who cannot even access the coverage they have because it costs too much for them. That's the problem. We have a huge number of deaths just because of the uninsurance. We have probably an even greater number of deaths due to the inadequately insured each year. Those are the problems to be solved. This is not a game where we're moving a ball forward. I don't care if he's moving the ball forward from the 20-yard line to the 25-yard line. That's not good enough. That's not good enough.
Not going to win Medicare for all. If we lose on expanding benefits, we're not going to get to Medicare for all. If we lose on eliminating taxpayer support, U.S. government support for continued extraction of fossil fuels, we're not going to get the Green New Deal.
Those things are wrong. They were wrong in 2009, they were wrong in 2010, and they are wrong now. You could not infer that because you lose a vote on a minuscule improvement in your situation, that you would lose a vote on a huge improvement. In 2009, we could not move the ball on the lousy public option which the Democrats put forward in June of 2009. We could not move the ball. So they compromised and they asked for less and less and less. And finally, they said, we have to do something. After all the time we've invested, we have to get something out of this. So we're going to pass the Affordable Care Act bailout for the pharmaceutical companies, but for the providers, and do a little something for the American people. And we think the American people ought to be hugely grateful to us for doing that. And they did win that vote. Barely. They won that vote. Barely they got it. They would have been better off had they lost that vote. Because the Affordable Care Act at first was terribly unpopular. It lost them the election of 2010. Their failure to pass a good medical reform lost them the election in 2010. Does anybody think that if Barack Obama had gone for H.R. 676 in February of 2009, that he would have lost that election in 2010? No way. And don't give me the fact that he couldn't pass it because there was a filibuster. We know better now. We know they can get rid of the filibuster using the nuclear option. They knew that in 2009. They knew they could have gotten rid of the filibuster in 2009. There were 58 Democratic votes before they got that 59 and 60th vote. Okay, a little later, they were elected in 2009 with 58 Senate votes. They could have given away 8 votes and used the nuclear option and getting rid of the filibuster if Obama had wanted it. If Obama had called Harry Reid, but to the White House, had called Harry Reid to see him while he was getting ready to go to the White House, and he had told Harry at that time, look, Harry, I can't pass my agenda with the filibuster. They'll block everything. They'll try to ruin my presidency. When you organize on January 3rd, you got to get rid of the filibuster. I don't think Harry Reid would have said no to him. But if he even got close to a no, I think Obama could have clearly hinted, Harry, you are running again in 2010. If you don't do this for me, I don't think that I'll be able to come to Nevada and support you for re-election in 2010. I need this to make my administration successful and to do what's right for the American people. Do you think if Obama had said that, he wouldn't have gotten that from Harry Reid? And then, needing only 50 votes from plus the vice president, he could have passed H.R. 676 in 2009, early in 2009, and implemented it fully by January of 2010. Do you think if that had happened, that Obama and the Democrats would have lost the election of 2010? Do you think there would have been a Republican sweep across the country in 2010? Do you think they would have been free to gerrymander elections for the next 10 years? if Obama had done that early in 2010? If you do, then I have a bridge to sell you. I know Obama didn't want to do that. I know because he had his donors. I know he wanted to protect the deal flow. I know he really wanted to do a job as president that would leave him not antagonizing too many people so he could get rich by like the Clinton did. I know that was his model for he and his family. It's apparent. It's transparent that that's what he was thinking. But the point is that could have happened. And a lot of the disasters, including the election of Trump in 2016, that happened over the last 10 years, happened because Obama never made that decision in the early part of 2009. That decision, and by the way, the other decision to really pass a Recovery Act that would have sent us rocketing out of that recession. He could have done that. He had an advisor who was advocating, the chairperson of the Council of Economic Advisors at the time, who was advocating for a $1.8 trillion recovery bill. Instead, he ended up passing his lousy $800 billion recovery bill that caused the slowest recovery from a recession we have ever had since the Second World War. That was Obama. Okay. He did a very bad job because he reasoned the way this guy is reasoning now. Yeah, the Democrats had a tough time passing the health care bill. Do you think for a minute they would have had that tough a time passing the Medicare for All bill? No, it would have been hugely popular. And if it had passed, it would have been hugely popular. Going on.
So let us fight now.
Oh, I should mention this also. This is true with respect to the Green New Deal. The way he inferred that if you can't pass this fossil fuel subsidy thing, then you can't pass a Green New Deal. That is so disingenuous. A Green New Deal is a program that contains many different kinds of bills. Now, maybe people don't get excited about ending the fossil fuel subsidies. They may not get excited about that because they don't understand what it means. But they might get excited about a bill for a federal job guarantee that pays people $15 an hour in the cheapest place in the United States, and that goes up as high as $30 an hour in the most expensive part of the United States. They might get real excited over that piece of the Green New Deal. What I'm saying is there are many pieces of the Green New Deal that would likely be supported by 60, 70, 80% of the people. But you take one little part of the Green New Deal, even if it has majority support of the people to end subsidies for the fossil fuel companies. That's not something that's intensely on people's agenda. There's no intensity in back of that kind of support. On the other hand, you tuck that into a Green New Deal program as one of the provisions in a Green New Deal program, you might get 70, 80% support for that Green New Deal program and be able to pass that. Passing that alone, though, is another matter. You might sneak it through as part of a reconciliation bill. Yes, but that's not going to be because people are in favor of that little piece. So he's reasoning in a very linear, incremental way. That's not the way things work in politics. The Green New Deal is popular because of the way AOC marketed it. She didn't equate the Green New Deal with the idea that you end fossil fuel subsidies to the companies. She didn't equate that. People are not very excited about that. They don't necessarily want to go to the mat about that. They don't necessarily want to line up in the tens of thousands to call their senators about that or their House members about that, because they know that alone is not going to solve any problems. Incremental crap like this doesn't end up solving problems.
And win these victories. Change does not happen overnight. I've been organizing for over 2 decades. I helped lead the Fight for 15 movement. I organized the healthcare movement around.
Okay. He helped to lead the Fight for 15. How successful has he been at the Fight for 15? The Fight for 15 started in 2012, as far as I remember. He got involved in it, I think, in 2013, but I'm not going to quibble over that. As a matter of fact, I might have my facts slightly wrong here. The basic point is the Fight for 15 has been going on for 9 years now. And we just couldn't get it through Congress after 9 years. So he's pointing to his leadership in the Fight for 15 as an achievement, as an accomplishment that we should be happy about. I look at it and I say, if you were one of the leaders for the Fight for 15 and you haven't gotten us $15 an hour yet, then you've failed. You have failed. You are not a person I should be crediting with great leadership about.
Barack Obama to get him to own when he was a state senator in Illinois. Change does not happen overnight.
I was organizing healthcare around Barack Obama when he was a state senator. When he was a state senator back in Illinois. He wants credit for that, as if Barack Obama did a great thing for healthcare in this country. Now, I know some people still think Obama did a great deal for healthcare in this country, but I think he blew it. He could have had H.R. 676. Instead, he had 356,000 people dying between 2010 and 2016, and more dying since then because he failed to pass H.R. 676. So I'm not pleased that he organized the fight for health care around Barack Obama when Barack Obama was a state senator. I'm not pleased about his experience with Barack Obama. I don't know why we want someone as the head of our revolution who used to work for Barack Obama and was part of Barack Obama's team. I think he ought to resign and go up to Martha's Vineyard and see if he can get a job there.
Right, unless you want like violent overthrow, dictator, and that's not what we're democratic socialists, and we are advancing to that vision. And what has happened in the last...
That's the kind of language we were getting from Obama's crew in 2009 and 2010, and that we've been getting ever since. It's pie in the sky, folks. They can't point to any accomplishments. They always claim to be the great strategist and the great tacticians and the people who really know politics. But the truth is, all they can point to as an accomplishment is the lousy Affordable Care Act. And there are so many things that we can point to that were disasters produced by the Obama-Biden administration between 2009 and 2016, and then the final disaster, the election of Donald Trump in 2016. Why? Because the party built by the Clintons and the Obamas had to have their deal flows So they had to nominate someone clearly unpopular that the mass of American people could not stand. Probably the only reasonable Democrat that Donald Trump could beat. They chose to run as their standard bearer in 2016 because they were so convinced that they knew what politics was. I ask people to look at the track record of people like Joseph Givarsi, or Givaris, I guess, over the period of time since 2005, 2006. And I ask you to consider, what have they wrought? I don't want them in our movement. They don't deserve to be in our movement. They have been, in the words of Richard Gephardt, who I'm not holding a brief for because he went out and he became a lobbyist and started working for the people he could not beat. But in his words, they are a miserable failure. Okay, that's all I have time for tonight. I have to apologize. I've only gone through about 8 minutes of this guy's presentation. I think it's worthwhile going back to it tomorrow night. So I'm going to come back to this little piece of assassination tomorrow night and go further with it, because I think this guy is a major gaslighter, and I really don't want to have anything to do with him. And off what he said here, I don't know why people would want to have anything to do with him, but especially when we get into all of the incrementalism he's going to dish out in the rest of this video. I mean, it's enough to make you feel really, really nauseated. So I'll come back tomorrow night to finish this. And I want to tell you now also, Thursday night, I have Jeff Ginter scheduled to come on with me for an interview. I noticed Jeff was here tonight. I don't know if he's still here. Hope he is. But he's coming on Thursday. And I think at this point that I'm also going to have a lady by the name of Madeline Hoffman, who is a tremendous activist from the Green Party for years and years and years, and who's also an adjunct professor who teaches, I think, at Rutgers, if I'm not mistaken. But I have to double check that out. But she has taken a recent trip to Colombia, and she's coming on Saturday, and we're going to talk about her trip and what she learned, in Colombia. So that's for Thursday and Saturday. Tomorrow, I'm going to have some more of this, and if I can get to some other political elements as well, I will get there. But now I want to consider your comments. Hopefully, some of you will have some good news for me and for the rest of us about what is happening in Cleveland. So let me stop the screen. Now come back in and let me go back to your comments. And there was no sound, so Carmen says San Fran is going to let people who have the J&J have a shot of Pfizer, a shot of either the Pfizer, or Moderna vaccines. Ghostat says Badnina down just under 10 points, closing the gap. Trending site predicts a win. That is an initial piece of good news from Ghost Start. I have sound now, Steve Wolfbrand. Pat. Okay, from Nicola. Hi, Kay. Yes, I have got it. Kay says, good, glad to help. Nicola Curtin says, very cool coverage, actually. Feels to me as though it would be virtually impossible for Nina to lose this election from the pre-election reports I was seeing and listening to me. Emphasis on the virtually because I'm always very nervous about the corporate Dems and the right wing. I'm never happy until we get over the line. Okay, Nicola says, so for me, if Nina loses, this result would have a feeling of being wrong, if you know what I mean. Yeah, me too. How would you feel if Nina Turner loses? How would you view that defeat? What do you think the reasons for it would be? Kay says, me too, Nicola, especially in GOP states like Ohio, where I'm stuck again. And Kay says, Nina has to win, in my opinion, has to win in mine too. I think it's very important for all our survival that she wins, because I do think she is capable of lighting a fire under the progressives in the House. Yes. Okay, Nicola says, Kay, what do you think happens if she loses? And Nicola says, I agree. Nicola says, I agree Nina has to win. Kay says, back to the SOS in Ohio, sadly. Okay, and Nicola says, you need to do something to change the rules. Obviously, yes, we do. We need to do something to change the rules. And we can't work entirely within the system to change the rules. It's because we'll have to force changes by doing things outside. It has to be bottom up. Kay says she's closing the gap. Okay, and Dolores says there's a 9-point difference with 35% in. Nina's closing the gap. And Kay says, Nicola, we have been trying, but no luck yet. Okay, Nicholas says that's the kind of thing I want to hear, because when I watched on social media the presidential election in November, commentators and my American Facebook friend was telling me which areas Biden would win and which Trump would win. And he was virtually 100% correct based on which areas are favorable to each candidate. And normally, Terry Burke says baby is teething, so forgive me if I have to step away. Okay, and Nicholas says, no probs, Terry. How old is your baby? Also, Dolores says, yes. Jim Locke says, holy crap, I essentially had to type the address for BreadTube to recognize that I wanted Joe's live stream. But Russ Goldman says, yes, the audio is good. I'm sorry about the problem at first, folks. Terry Burke says, yes, I heard that. And Jim Locke says, no, Lana, odd. And Terry Burke says, she's 3 months. Wow, Terry, that's really, it's been a long time since my kids were 3 months. Kay says, he isn't as good as some of the smaller OR groups. And Nicholas says, well, I cannot believe how much the progressive movement in the U.S. has grown, given that Bernie first stood in 2016 only. You seem to have grown massively. Someone tell me how many progressives have been elected to Congress so far. It all depends on who you consider a progressive. I think that, we have the squad, and we have also Jayapal, and Ro Khanna, and so probably 15 who under all criteria you would say, are truly progressive. But I think that using a criteria that are a little more lax than that, there are probably 50 people within the progressive caucus who are truly progressive on most issues. Altogether, there are about 100 people in the caucus, but some of them are just kidding. About half of them are probably just kidding. Can someone tell me how many progressives have been elected to Congress so far? So you've heard from me. I gave that answer. Ghostot said, Menina won Akron by a few votes. Cleveland is still coming in. Statement in chat. I was under the impression that Nina had to win Akron big and that she would win Akron big, but that may be a false impression. I got that impression based on what people said before the election. Okay, Nicholas said, what percentage of elected Dems do the progressives actually make up at the moment? Well, if I take the 50, they probably make up about 20%. That's more than 20%. It's probably 22 or 23%. Is it possible these elections will be rigged too? You said Nina's behind. Carmen said, come on, Nina, you're our gold medalist. I meant the question for Dolores. Evelina, Ohio is a corrupt state. Dolores says the early count was early voting, and the early reporting locations weren't Nina's strong areas. Thank you for that information, Dolores. Jeffrey said, smarter than Joe Biden. Not a very high bar. You can trip over that bar. Yeah, you can. Russ said, FDR never praised the billionaires of that day. He never said something like Biden, quote, I don't think that 700 billionaires are our problem. They're absolutely our problem. And Kay says, big money is a huge problem in the United States. Russ says, based on what I see, I would say that we have a problem with our predator plunderer class. They have no capacity to control or limit themselves. That's right. They have no capacity at all. They have no sense of noblesse oblige. None at all. Carmen said, can my comments be seen? I'm in some kind of stupid fascist book jail. Yes, your comments on YouTube can be seen. You can't go live right now to prevent abuse, but I didn't get a notification until this program came on. Nina, minus 7.8 says go start, so she continues to close. And Kay says, don't trust Jeffries at all. I'm sorry, Jeffries? Who's Jeffries? And Go Start says that, but Carmen Muniz, I see you. And Carmen Muniz says, thank you, Go Start. And Kay says, the majority of all voters want Medicare for all, a single payer of some kind. Yeah, that's about 70%. Go Start says 6% with 53% in. If Nina's supposed to get a big margin in Cleveland, probably the Cleveland vote will come in but later than the rest of the vote. On the other hand, the machine may be very strong, okay, in Cleveland. On the third hand, however, because of Nina's old ties to Ohio, she may be very strong with the machine. A lot of machine people came out and endorsed her. Milan says, hi, folks. I was watching Jen and Jordan reporting on Nina's vote returns. She's down about 6% and closing the gap, fingers crossed. Kay says, I like Grayson, but Jeffrey Ginter says, I love you, Joe. Thank you, Jeff. Kay says, he might run again in Florida. Yeah, I thought he was running for the Senate in Florida. And the Falcone General says, hey, and Jim Locke says, laugh out loud, act blue, Nina lost. She should have run outside the Democratic Party. She's lost? I don't think she's lost yet. I don't listen to this guy at all. Don't know why he's the head of OR. Shake my head. Jim Locke says, there's Lana. Wondered where you were. The Falcone General says, I'm going to clear up things never said. Those things about that happened on Twitter. I never said anything against you on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter. Jeff Genter says, like Congressman Andy Kim. Kay says, listen to our revolution out of California. And Jim Locke says, Democrats will get rid of the filibuster right before the next Republican Congress steps in, probably, to grease the way. But the Republicans can do it anytime they want anyway, so that doesn't matter. And the Falcone General says, also, I think someone impersonating me, and I hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Kay says, I hope Biden doesn't screw up bad enough to let the GOP win in 2022. He's already screwing up badly enough to let them win in 2022. Just by not getting rid of the filibuster and passing the voting rights bills. That was like the first thing he had to do right after the American Rescue Plan. He should have said, nothing else moves until we pass the voting rights bills. Nothing else moves. Nothing else moves. Nothing happens until we pass these voting rights bills. That's what he should have said. He's got a voting emergency building up, and he doesn't want to take the steps to meet it. Evelina says a few years down the road, a right-leaning government would definitely get rid of Medicare, privatizing large chunks of it. Under the situation right now, but if Medicare for all passes, that would be so popular that no right-leaning government could ever get rid of it, could ever win. And if Medicare for all was passed, and a few other good things were done by this administration, I can tell you what they are. There aren't going to be any Republicans in power for a generation. That is not something you have to worry about. If you do a Roosevelt, you get 20 to 25 years of solidly Democratic governments going right down the line. That would not change. Okay, says need to pass, and you get a Democratic Party that would really be a Democratic Party besides, rather than this shell. Okay, says needs to pass the voting rights bill right now. Evelina says Dems will not expand it. Joe Start says minus 5.7, minus 5.5. Kay says pretty bad is an understatement. Terry says I don't like this dude. Which dude? Kay says I don't either, Terry. Joe Start says Nina takes the stage. Have you heard Nina speaking right now? Sounds like she has conceded. What do you think about that? Evelina says identity politics is BS. Evelina says, and Nicola Curtin, it was rigged. Kay says, haven't heard that, Nicola. Kay, I am listening to her speak right now on status quo, and she is conceding. Nina having Weaver on board was a bad omen, in my opinion. My opinion, too. I don't think she ever should have gotten Jeff Weaver on board. That was a mistake. Her words were, tonight we will not cross that bridge. Oh, God. Palana says, hi, Jim Locke. Not sure about anyone here, but even though I am in Scotland, I get what this means for America and countries like mine. I am furious as hell that once again corruption has won the day. And Jim Locke says, hi, Lana. Okay, so Nicholas says, in Scotland, we have an SNP fascist government, or absolute Donald Trump clones. And the success of the progressives in the U.S., I believe, will encourage the success of socialism in Scotland once again. It used to be one of the most socialist countries in the U.K. until Tony Blair. Okay, I think you mean in the EU. Oh, no, you probably mean in the U.K. Until Tony Blair stopped all that. Yeah, I know Tony Blair stopped all that. Kay says, yes, I hate it too, Nicola. I was wondering if after Bernie's 2016 defeat if he should have run as an independent. I think the time is coming, if it has not already come, perhaps, but for the progressives to start a new progressive democratic socialist party in the United States. Well, I actually think, even though the Green Party isn't called that it is a democratic socialist party. And the People's Party might be pretty close to it, too. Evelyn says we need to get even more furious. Terry Burke says Scotland being overtaken by neoliberalism as well. Okay, Nicola Curtin says, I think it stinks to high heaven that a progressive candidate loses an election at a time when the progressives have the support of the majority of the country. I don't think that we have the support of the majority of the country, Nicola. I think that's the problem. We have a country which agrees with progressives on the issues. That much is true. If you poll the major issues of the country, the people in the country are taking a progressive line on all the individual issues. But when progressive candidates are run and they take the same positions on those particular issues, and the non-progressives run on something like identity politics or on almost nothing, the way Chantel Brown ran, then people vote for the person who has the support of the establishment. Is it because people are afraid of change? Maybe. That certainly seems to be the case in the UK. I've never understood why the people in the UK voted for the Tories rather than voting for Jeremy Corbyn. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you could vote for Boris Schmucko as opposed to Jeremy Corbyn. I just don't understand it. It's insanity. It's like it was just as bad as people voting for Trump here. If the progressives have the support of the majority of the country, how the hell did Trump win in 2016? Evelina says, Terry Burke, the UK is governed by the Tories, conservative right wing. Scotland is a monetary sovereign then? No. Terry Burke, but many people, I'm sorry, this is actually Nicola Curtin saying to Terry Burke, but many people refuse for some unknown reason to accept that the SNP are fascists. And I think that is a lot of the problem. But they have proved time and time again that they are fascists. We now have a hate crime bill where you say in the privacy, what you say in the privacy of your own home can be prosecuted. What? The SNP are all Trumpian grifters, and the whole party is being investigated over £600,000 of missing money, and they're always being accused, and some have been found guilty of financial crimes. Sounds like the Republicans here. Sounds like Nina's conceding. I hate that. Ohio loses again. Someone get me out of this POS state. Now, that was a solidly Democratic area. So, it seems to indicate again that in many areas of the country where Democrats have solid control, people will still not vote for a progressive whose record as a progressive is superb. I mean, it seems to me that if Nina had run in one of those New York districts, she would have won. If she now moves into a New York district, she can probably get elected, hands down. This is awful. This is really awful. Evelina says, they're under Westminster. Scotland is not independent. And Nicola Curtin says, I cannot think of an SNP population that's not either been accused or found guilty of a financial crime. They keep promising contracts to Scottish companies, and they never appear. Highland ferries are in a mess because of it, Terry Burke says. Be right back. But be right back. Laura is crying again. Sorry to hear it. Nicola says, I believe this result calls for civil disobedience, bring the country to a standstill. The neoliberals are doing that anyway, so do it on our terms. Yeah, we are going to be in the last two live streams just before this on Thursday, actually Wednesday night and Saturday night. I talked about general strikes, possibility of general strikes, okay, with the people who were on with me for conversations. And Jim Barrett said, the filibuster will only be replaced with some other excuse. And probably Jeff Ginter and I will be talking some general strikes on Thursday night here. Okay, Nicholas says, so sorry about this result, everyone, but it is 3:30 in the morning here in Scotland, so time to say night for now. I will not say good night. We will win again. Remember, the progressives were on a winning run until tonight. Well, not really. The results in 2020 were mixed. 2018, they were very good, but for progressives. In 2020, they were mixed. This was not a good sign. I think what really has to happen, by the way, and if it had happened, we probably wouldn't be seeing the results that we are seeing tonight. Specifically, the Squad and progressives had a chance to deny Pelosi the speakership of the House on January 3rd. of 2021. They did not make that move. They did not make that move. They were too frightened. They would not make that move. But the arithmetic was clear. They could have denied her the speakership until the cows came home or until she decided to withdraw her candidacy. Had they done so, they could have gotten an entirely new leadership team in there, including replacing Jim Clyburn. And if Jim Clyburn had been replaced, if he had been replaced as, what is he? The majority whip, I think, at this point. Steny Hoyer is the leader, right? And Jim Clyburn is the majority whip. If he had been replaced as the majority whip, he might have retired by now. Or if he had not retired, he would certainly been taken down many, many pegs. And he would not have had the influence in the Democratic Party that he has had to swing this race over to Shontel Brown. So this race may well have been lost on January 3rd when AOC, Cori Bush, Anna Presley, Ilhan Omar, by Jamal Bowman, by Anne-Marie Newman, and Mondaire Jones, and Pramila Jayapal, and Ro Khanna failed to stand together. Oh, and I forgot also Rashida Tlaib failed to stand together to block Nancy Pelosi. They could have done that. They could have voted for one of their own or for some placeholder, and we would have seen a different leadership team in the House. There might have been a result that was very different on the American Rescue Plan. In terms of the fight for 15 on the American Rescue Plan, things might have been very, very different in terms of attempts made to get through Medicare for All. Certainly Medicare for All could have gotten a floor vote. The rules of the House might have been changed to make it easier to get some floor votes. There would have been better committee positions for the progressives in the House. And today, we might have been in a position where Jim Clyburn would never have intervened in Ohio at all because he wouldn't have been a leader of the Democrats anymore. So that's just one possible consequence of a decision made by the squad not to stand on their hind legs on January 3rd, 2021. Dolores Pierce says Nina conceded. The winner was mostly unknown 2 months ago until dark money groups outspent Nina 3-1, Wall Street and Israel support groups. And Nicola Curtin said, oh, and finally, make sure and tell the corporates that this defeat does not mean they've defeated the progressive movement. What the corporates are doing is putting all their supporters in early graves. I support no one who puts people in early graves. I believe the corporates think the only people who will be in early graves are the progressives and socialists. Who said so? COVID does not respect what color of badge you wear, and it does not respect how much money you have. Well, unfortunately, to some degree, it does respect how much money you have because the people with more money are able to protect themselves better. Of course, other things being equal, like stubbornness, intelligence, sophistication, stuff like that, it does not respect what color of badge you wear. But unfortunately, money does tend to protect the richer people among us. Evelina says, didn't Obama want to play it safe? Being the first black president, all was enough for him in a large portion, the Dem base, all faux progressives. Yes, Obama wanted to play it safe. And of course, you don't get to FDR by playing it safe. You get to being a second FDR by solving problems, by passing bills, that are going to work. When FDR came in, what he was known for was throwing everything up against the wall and finding out what sticks. That's what characterized his particular presidency. He was the pragmatist of pragmatists. He was known for his pragmatism. But people like Joseph Givares, who talks about being a pragmatic progressive, is not talking about being a Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt threw up all kinds of radical bills to see what would help the situation. And he finally found those bills that did help the situation. And that's why he got elected to the presidency 4 times. Because everybody knew that he was trying to solve our problems. With everything he had, he was trying to solve our problems. Nobody thought that about Obama beyond the first 2 months of his presidency. He wasn't trying to solve our problems. He was trying to do just enough to get himself elected again in 2012. And then just enough that he could retire in 2016 with some honor sufficient for him to get large speaking fees. And Nicola Curtin says climate change is also coming for the corporates because there are so many countries and regions of the world where it's literally putting countries under the sea and breaking them apart. Climate change does not bother to ask for ID before deciding which parts of countries and which parts of the world it affects. That is the point that corporates are missing, and it is going to start costing them. I hope so. I think so. Okay, I do agree with that. But unfortunately, it's not happening quickly enough. As witness what happened here tonight. Nina was someone who would deal with the climate. She was someone who would deal with Medicare for all. She was someone who would deal with our equality problems and our economic problems. She was the person they needed, and they did not have enough common sense to see through the BS that the corporates were putting out in this election. By the way, Nina had plenty of money. How much did Wall Street spend? I mean, Nina must have raised $2 to $3 million herself. How much did they spend to beat her? Evelyn said, needs to think transversely, not but linearly. No vision, for crying out loud. Evelina says, grr. But Dolores Pierce says, at this point, we need a lot more than $15 an hour. I completely agree. I completely agree. I think my sound is okay, isn't it? Okay, Dolores, at this point, we need a lot more than $15 an hour. I agree. Evelyn says, by the time we decide to pass 15, we'll be needing 40. Laugh out loud. Okay, so it should be $20 an hour now, Dolores Pierce. Should be over that, I think. Lana says, Tom Harkin from Iowa said flat out, they had the votes for Medicare for all, and they blew it. Yep, they did. Carrie Burke said, I started seeing through this type of rhetoric a long time ago. Evelyn said, it's not the truth, Dr. Joe. They like to think they're great strategists. Yeah. And they end up getting us nothing. Their strategy is so great, they get us nothing. Kay says, Obama sucks. I just read that Nina Turner has conceded. And Lana says, I think he is a detriment to our revolution. I do too. I think with him running the show, the contributions to our revolution are going to go like that. Kay says, sadly, she has Russell. And Lana says, yay, Jeff Ginter. Evelina says, he's cultured and black. That's what it is. Laugh out loud. And Kay says, he sucks, Evelina Pont. Anyone have the updated Nina voting figures? Evelina says, Columbia, cool. Steve says, Kay, Clark Ryan, she lost. It's over. And Lana says, hi, Bonnie in the background. Bonnie laughs. And Kay says, I know Steve. And Steve says, sound. I think sound is there, isn't it? Isn't my sound fine right now, everybody? Please tell me. And Lana says, not sure if you mentioned this earlier, but I heard that Biden asked Cuomo to resign over sexual harassment allegations. Yes, he has asked Cuomo to resign. God, I suppose Cuomo is going to make a speech tomorrow and he's going to say, why don't you resign? What about Tara Reid? Ghostart says, Nina 2022, hashtag SOS. By USA. By the way, she conceded. Princess Kenyatta says, it depends on what progressives can create it as a shared narrative that challenges ruling class narratives. She says, I've been watching Heartland's Media. They mentioned you several times. I sent them a thank you super chat for guesting on your show. They were very gracious and said that they started very small as well. Very cool, guys. Princess Kenyatta, yeah. But I've been starting small for years and years and years. Princess Kenyatta says, corporatist Democrats took Republican money to challenge Nina. I'll never trust Democrats. Even when it says, well, maybe Nina belongs on the outside, if that's any consolation. We could sure use her back at our revolution. We could use her back there. Steve Wolfbrand says, Nina lost. Never again for the Democratic Party. Never, ever, ever, ever. Fuck them. Never again. And Lana says, who's Falcone General talking about? I have no idea. Steve Wolfbrand said, Nina lost. Concession speech has been made. Over. Well, actually, the concession speech is not a legal thing. It doesn't really mean it's over, but it's probably over. Probably there's a big enough lead that the remaining returns that have to come in would not change it, I suppose. I haven't looked at those votes and things like that. Any of this, as I can tell you're pissed off, I get it. And Lana says, it was nice to see Jen Perelman and Tim Black on briefly with Jen and Jordan. Yes, I saw Jen Perelman on with Jen and Jordan just before this show started. And I saw Tim Black on with them earlier. That was a great thing with Tim Black. And it was very good with Jen, too. And Nicholas said, face it, Biden is a Republican and Democrats' clothing. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, most of the Democrats have been Republicans and Democrats' clothing since the 1980s. We've had 40 years of Republicans, in Democrat clothing. I mean, what the hell was Leon Panetta? He came over from the Republican Party, and for years he was top functionary in Democratic administrations. Okay, so Nicholas says, there's no choice now. Civil disobedience has to be the order of the day. Lana says, hashtag pack the court. Cannot pack the court unless you have Democratic majorities, and you can't get the Democratic majorities unless you pass the voting rights, and voting institution bills that they've put forward. Until those bills are passed, you cannot get, a Democratic majority that would allow packing the court. Well, of course, if you get rid of the filibuster, you could start to pack the court now. So I take that back partly, but of course, they got to get rid of the filibuster. So Lana says, I love Scotland. Hard to hear that. And so Nicola says, that was England who voted for Boris Johnson. That is what led to Scots demanding and getting our own parliament. The fact the English always vote Tory and will always vote Tory. That's so crazy. And Lana says, there was a smear campaign against Corbyn on false anti-Semitic charges. Over and over the press until people started to believe it enough not to vote for him. Hashtag propaganda. Okay, says, hope Scotland does better than we or the UK have done. Even this is still subject to Westminster, even with your own parliament. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Lana says, I'm very sorry about Nina. Me too. I feel terrible. Okay, says Clyburn needs to go. He's Big Pharma's puppet. Yeah, if you say Clyburn needs to go, you have to say Nancy needs to go. Nancy has to go. Vacate the chair, Nancy. Vacate the chair. Yeah, our Rev loves Clyburn. Our Rev loves Clyburn, afraid of how, I guess. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, our Rev loves Clyburn. Anyway, Steve Wolfman, Scotland needs to be independent. Okay, and Nicola says, okay, I'm getting some facts wrong and therefore learning a lot, so time for bed at 4:06 in the morning here in Scotland. Thank you for coming, Nicola. Night, everyone. Keep the progressive movement going. We will try. Evelina says, our Rev, afraid of Clyburn, won't speak out against him. Who is our Rev? And Evelina says, they don't let it. And Kay says, not all our Rev loves Clyburn. Who's our Rev? Oh, our Revolution. Our Revolution loves Clyburn. No, our Revolution doesn't love Clyburn. Our Revolution's afraid of Clyburn. I don't know why they're afraid of Clyburn. I mean, he already killed Bernie Sanders. They should be doing everything they can to get him out. They should be doing everything they can to get Nancy Pelosi's whole frickin' leadership team out. They're a lot of what's wrong with the Democratic Party in Congress. And Steve says, I'm definitely going to Jimmy Dore on the Congo couch. Never get for a Democratic Party candidate. No, never again. That's over. Evelina says, you're right. I'm just angry. Ghost Dot said, Tim Black looked huge seeing him standing up for once. Yeah, I thought that too. He was huge. And Lana says, Obama caved to the insurance lobby. They threatened to make him a one-term president if he cut them out with Medicare for all. If he cut them out with Medicare for all, how could they make him a one-term president? Their money would have totally dried up. If he if cut them out in February of 2009, by January of 2010, everyone would have had Medicare for all, and the insurance companies would have been out of business. That's the point. You don't give them any transition time. You make the change fast on an emergency basis. So they lose all their income immediately. So their stock caves. So they can't campaign against you. Take away their money. They can't campaign against you. Evelina says, don't blame you. Kay says, wish. I mean, you got to be Machiavellian about this. These people giving time for a transition, they're crazy. Oh boy, we have a lot of comments here. Wish we had a third party that could win. Well, wishing won't do anything. We got to build a third party that can win. Kay says, our two-party system won't allow it. Well, actually, if everybody suddenly decided not to vote for the Democrats, but vote for the Greens, come what may, there are probably enough states where the Greens are on the ballot that Democrats could lose and the Green Party could win the presidency. That would be a big help. Henry Wallace, the man who wrote most of FDR's bills, would have changed the world had sick FDR not rolled over and allowed Truman to stop the New Deal's progress. Actually, Truman added to the New Deal's progress in certain ways, and Henry Wallace was only the vice president for a relatively short time, and he didn't write all or most of FDR's bills. Yes, he was very important for the rural agricultural bills as Secretary of Agriculture. As the vice president, he was also very important. But there were many others who helped to write FDR's bills. There was Harry Hopkins, Harold Ickes, Francis Perkins. There was the Brain Trust, of FDR, specifically Rexford Guy Tugwell, A. Burley, and who was the third member of the Brain Trust? I forgot. It will come to me. But anyway, they helped to write the original FDR bills, the NRA bills. But all the labor bills, the mover and shaker there was Frances Perkins. On Social Security, the mover and shaker there was Frances Perkins. Evelina says, sounds okay. Russ says, yes, the audio is good. And Dolores says, the sound is good. Steve Wolfman says, the Israeli lobby put in a ton of money to sink Nina. Fuck Israel. Well, it's Americans giving money to the Israeli lobby. And Evelina says, figures. And Kay says, I'm sick to death voting blue no matter who. Well, maybe Nina should run again as an independent or run on the Green Party ticket in the fall. It's a safe district for Dems. There are not going to be many Republican votes. It might be a perfect situation to divide up the Democratic vote and see if Nina gets a majority of it. And Steve Wolfbrand says, DBS, I think you mean BDS. And Terry Burke says, if Jeffrey Ginter runs for office, I donate. So would I. Evelina says, I believe Tara. I think a lot of people believe Tara. And Ghostar says, I think it would have helped had Nina embraced Medicare for all. Oh, you mean the march? If she had embraced the march, it might have helped because people were doubting this because of this propaganda campaign. People were doubting that Nina was for Medicare for all. Maybe if she had started a Medicare for all march in Cleveland, if she had been a prime mover behind the Medicare for all march in Cleveland and had a Medicare for all march in Cleveland, what were they doing only having a Medicare for all march in Columbus? What was that about? Cleveland would have been the best area for Medicare for all. I mean, Cleveland was Dennis Kucinich's old stomping grounds. He ran on Medicare for all the time. Russ says, got to call it a night, getting started early tomorrow. Jim Locke says, Bernie 2016 is not Bernie 2021. We need to appreciate what Bernie gave us, but we need to realize Bernie has been compromised since the 2016 DNC. I realize that. I fully realize that. Not me, us was a very good movement. We have to take it seriously. Not me means not Bernie. Us means all the rest of us. It's our movement. We have to act like it. It isn't Bernie's movement. We got to take it over. We got to have the movement actually generate a new party or start supporting one of the third parties. I think the Green Party is a good candidate. I'm not prepared to explain why it hasn't been successful before this, but I'm telling you, there are a lot of really good people inside of the Green Party. People who will work for us, legislate for us, and support us, and who won't sell out to the big money. And that's a really important thing. And if they could get some key people from the movement, if they could get a whole movement supporting them, they might be able to kick Democratic butts in 2022 and 2024. There is still time. FDR was too ill to fight it at that point, a sad pivotal point for sure, said Lana Dell. Jim Locke said, so very true, Lana. Steve Wolfbrand said, Biden sniffs little girl's hair, wants Cuomo to resign, laugh out loud. Well, I hope that Cuomo listens. I want Cuomo to resign too. Cuomo's been terrible for New York State. He's awful. Lana says, Steve, I doubt the Medicare for All march had much to do with this race. I don't know, Lana. It depends on who would have been behind the Medicare for All march in Cleveland. If Nina had campaigned in connection with that and been in back of that, it might have helped her. Evelina said, all so pitiful. Laugh out loud. Steve Irwin says, fuck Israel, free Palestine. Evelina says, fuck ISRA, training Colombian police. And Kay says, yes, Pegosi needs to go too. Steve Wolfbrand says, our revolution needs to be taken over by somebody else if it's going to stay, okay? But if this is our revolution because we are us, we have to create our own version of our revolution. Evelina says, that's why they're afraid of Clyburn, Dr. Joe. He killed Bernie. I don't know why people are afraid of Clyburn. Clyburn is not popular throughout the United States. I guess I know why they're afraid of Clyburn. They're afraid of the money that Clyburn can command. That's what it is. Steve Wolfbrand said, Tim is a big guy. He is a big guy. He's an impressive guy. So Lana said, I just pulled up the latest polls. Brown, 35,504. Nina, 31,202. Still counting. Is that a heavy vote for that area? I mean, is that a heavy vote for that area? Now, that's only 66,000 votes. Oh, but it is a Democratic primary. It's not the general. That's probably why the vote total is relatively low. It is a greater vote total than in AOC's primaries. Jim Locke says, Democratic Party is what is wrong in Congress, Joe. The Republicans are honest that they will screw the working class. Well, Trump wasn't honest about that. He was appealing to the working class. Evelina says she's just toxic at this point. Steve says Israel is an evil, genocidal state. Well, I hate to say it, Steve. I have relatives there. But I am very, very close to saying the same thing. Steve Wolfbrand says, but BDS, Kay says, I don't think the Greens are on Ohio's ballot. Lana says, Dr. Joe, only you would be able to list without looking who wrote FDR's bills, laugh out loud. That's not true. Harvey J.K. would do a far better job than I could do at that, Lana. And you know that, I think. Theodore sends boycott Israel, sanction Israel. Jim Locke, thank you, Joe. I appreciate your insights. Evelyn says, New Jersey getting ready to block another boat at the port, I heard. Lana says, it really is hideous the way the establishment attempts threw all the dollars at a no-name to defeat Nina, similar to what they tried, with Ilhan Omar. But they didn't succeed with Ilhan because she snuck in at first, and by the time people had seen her for 2 years, they were no longer able to defeat her. They were probably afraid the same thing would happen with Nina. Unfortunately, Nina had too high a profile to sneak in. If the progressive who had been running had been a no-name, then maybe Chantal wouldn't have gotten all that money and maybe Chantal wouldn't have won. As it is, they voted for someone who was facing ethics charges and may end up facing criminal charges. And they voted for her anyway. Kay says, exactly. Cleveland needed a Medicare for All march. Terry Burke said, so Kucinich was for the people? Absolutely. Absolutely. Kucinich was the youngest politician in the United States for years and years. And he ran that city clean. And when he was a congressman, he was the congressman, not Bernie. He was the congressman who was most dangerous for the establishment at that time, even more so than Bernie, probably, when he was in Congress. He was gerrymandered out of Congress. His district was changed so that he had to run against, what's her name? She's still in Congress. You hardly hear about her anymore, but she was considered to be fairly liberal back. Democrat. I'm sorry, there was an interruption in the stream there. I saw it. Anyway, he had to run against a Democrat who was a popular Democrat also, okay, in the primary, and they gerrymandered the district, so more of his voters were outside of the district, okay, and so he had to run against this other popular Democrat, and she beat him because they took most of his voters out of his new district. See, he had a residence, okay, in a particular area. They saw to it that most of his voters were in the other part of Cleveland, okay, in Marcia Fudge's district, what became her district, okay, which is the district I believe that Nina, okay, is running in actually right now, but she was running in. But anyway, but Dennis was defeated in that way, and once he was kicked out of Congress, he hasn't been able to get back in. I believe since then he's run for Congress again. He's run for governor. He ran for the Senate. Hard for him to run a statewide election because he's perceived as a radical. Updated vote, Brown 36,572, Nina 32,177. But that's a majority of 4,000 votes. Now, at the time 1% of the vote was in, it appeared at that time that Brown had a 4,000 vote lead. So we're supposed to believe throughout all the other 99% of the vote, it was even Steven all the way? I don't think so. I remember early in the evening when Jordan was quoting the voting figures. And Brown had a 4,000 vote lead at that time, early in the evening. She was 20 points ahead early in the evening with a 4,000 vote lead. At the very end, she had a 5.5 point lead, but she was still 4,000 votes ahead. Strikes me there might be some fraction magic going on there. What kind of voting machines were they using? Jim Locke says, Green Party, Ventura, California, sucks. Jim Locke says, apparently old Uphill Media, Steve, has blocked me. I'm doing my job. Who is old Uphill Media Steve? I'm not sure who that is. Steve Wolfbrand says, Greens are nice people. The people at the top suck. The People's Party is better. Some of the people at the top don't suck. For example, Margaret Flowers doesn't suck. For that matter, Howie Hawkins doesn't suck. He's really a nice person. And Lana says, who is Uphill Media, Steve? Jim Locke says, Wolfbrand or something like that. I don't think Steve Wolfbrand is Uphill Media. And Kay says, when I was young, Cleveland was a powerful city and it rocked too, laugh out loud. So many great concerts there back then. Yeah, Cleveland was killed by the Democrats, by NAFTA. Jim Locke says Trump wasn't in Congress, Joe. No, Trump wasn't in Congress. That's very true. I don't think I ever said Trump was in Congress, did I? So I'm not sure I get your point, Jim Locke. And Steve Wolfbrand said Israel is a despicable country. They're genocidable. They need to disappear. So Lana says, oh, Steve W., got it. Not sure what happened, but I can't wait for all the infighting to slow down. Sad. So Lana says, you're going to have Harvey K on? I'll try to have Harvey K on. I'll see. I'm getting a little more people coming now. So if we can double the size of that number so we can have an audience of 30 people, I think I might ask Harvey J.K. to come on. Steve Wolfbrand says, I really like the guy. Steve Wolfbrand says, give the Palestinians their property back. And Terry Burke says, did Kucinich come out for the Medicare for All march? I'm not sure what you mean by come out. Was he in support of the Medicare for All march? I bet money he was. But I don't think anybody listens to him anymore. He's getting to be, an old man now. His last run was for governor in the state of Ohio. He didn't succeed at that. Terry Burke says, sounds like they rigged against Nina. I hope Nina challenges, not cowers like Bernie did. Hope she has enough money for a lawsuit. But she's conceded, so she probably won't do that. She probably wants to get back to other things, like our revolution. Steve Wolfbrand said God never gave Israel that land. That God doesn't even exist. The Palestinians were there much earlier. The CP. Well, Steve says, I have no idea what uphill media is. Kay says, I love Harvey K. Yeah, Harvey K is a great historian. And I think I've come to the end. I'm going to say goodnight. I'll be back tomorrow night with more Joe Givaris critique. I hope that no one minds, that I'm doing that. I hope you appreciated that, because I thought it was great. And Jim Locke says, we need to walk away from my revolution. Yes, we did. And Lana says, updated votes, Brown 36,691, Nina 32,311. So it's now about 4,400 votes, right? Lana says, good night. And Jim Locke says, that's it. Still 4K votes, about 4,400 now. And Dolores says, thank you for a great discussion and good night all. Thank you, Dolores. Thank everybody for coming. Thanks so many of you for staying. I'll be on again at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye. And we love you, Kay. We love you too, Kay. And we'll see you tomorrow night.